I've been wanting to speak to you to be true since your comments on Saturday, which we're just going to remind our viewers of. You indicated that Friday, when Premier Ford announced these new restrictions, as you said on CBC Radio, that was the darkest day of your career. You were so discouraged. We're in a terrible situation right now in Ontario, and the province doesn't seem to be helping. It was emotional, Dr. Jüni. It was impactful. I'm wondering, Monday morning now, how are you feeling?
I feel a bit better, but it's heartbreaking. And what we now need to do is just, we need to move on, stand together and do the right thing. And we just need everybody to help now.
Everybody on their own, essentially. Just you're on your own?
No,
No.
I think we're in this together.
Okay.
And everybody needs to help, included our elected politicians, provincial, local. Everybody needs to see the seriousness of the situation and stop, sticking to political considerations or wishful thinking. This doesn't help to control a pandemic.
Okay, I want to talk about this in a lot more detail. When you said you feel a little bit better, I'm wondering if that's in part because the province did roll back some of the measures that caused immediate outcry, and that was the expanded police powers and also the closure of playgrounds. Is that those two things that have sort of assuaged your some concern there?
Well, I feel a little bit better because I went with my children to a playground on Trinity Bellwoods, and as many other people actually just, enjoyed myself a little bit there. This helped me personally a bit, and I was relieved at least to see a little bit. That's just the first tiny step into the right direction, that those measures that actually increased inequity even more so were dropped. That was important, but it's just a tiny step.
Okay, so feeling a bit better, but not overall. The rules that the Premier announced, one of them in particular has had a lot of questioning, and that is the ban on outdoor activities like golf, like tennis, things of that nature, basketball courts. Did your science table, did you advise the Premier to do that?
No, of course not. The opposite.
What does the science tell us about that type of activity?
Look, what we know is that we estimate, and this is just an estimate, that outdoor activities are probably roughly 20 times safer than indoor activities. This does not mean that you can, have unsafe behavior outdoors. Over the weekend, I heard of situations on playgrounds that were essentially unsafe. We really should seriously consider, for instance, mask mandate on playgrounds, but you can be safe outdoors. There's no way that we can be safe indoors with other people who don't belong to our household. And the best we can do indoors, if we absolutely must, because we are essential workers, for instance, is mask all the times, be 2 meters distant all the times. If we have a lunch break, go outside to have this lunch break, again, 2 meters distance from others, and never ever let it slip away. But it's challenging inside. Okay. Inside, you can't be safe.
But outside, yes. And that you specifically did not recommend to the Premier, although that was announced. What did his own science table advise that he did not do?
Look, the most important part is now that we address the root cause of this pandemic, and playgrounds are not the root cause, really not. So what we see is a pandemic now that is focused, unfortunately, on essential workers and their families. That's also what my colleagues see on the ICUs. And what we now need is just to do what, European governments just do as a default. No European government is arguing against paid sick leave. We need to pay people in an uncomplicated and efficient manner to stay home if they're either sick or were exposed. And this means generous, immediate and guaranteed. Otherwise, this doesn't work. If you live from paycheck to paycheck and you can't pay your rent, if something just drops away, you can't just wait and have some complicated process. That is the case, for the provincial paid sick leave. This was a complete failure. We need to be aware of that. It's too complicated. It's not enough. It comes too late. And I see this, and this is heartbreaking, that not only Ontario, but also in other provinces such as BC, that nothing has happened on a provincial level. So the federal paid sick leave was actually counterproductive. For a European like me to see that, this is just like otherworldly, okay. I can tell you.
So again, just to be clear, this is a specific recommendation you made, the science table made, which was not acted upon by the provincial government.
Of course.
Did they give you, when they rejected it, I don't know if they immediately rejected it to you, did you get a reasoning why they were enacting what you didn't recommend and not enacting what you did recommend?
You need to understand, that most of the time this is Steny Brown who is in the cabinet, etc. And Steny Brown is basically representing the table, and I can't speak on his behalf. But what I see here is just we have a broken telephone problem here. I was wondering again and again over the last few days, could I have been any clearer with the warnings we are given in January? We've given in January, with the different measures that we laid out, and that my colleague Steny Brown laid out, my colleague Beate Sander. I don't think that we can't be any clearer. This is not a problem at the sending end. This is a problem at the receiving end. We need to stop having political considerations guide this pandemic. This does not work. It hasn't worked in the past. It won't work now. It hasn't worked in other jurisdictions. Why should it work here in Ontario? It does not.
So we've had an emergency room doctor on our program a number of times, and I was noticing one of her social media posts just the other day that, in her estimation, what came from the province on Friday was political compromise was more important than human lives. Would you agree with that?
Look, I don't know what happened there. It's just not the right thing. This is not rocket science. We just need to have common sense and understand the basics of this pandemic. If you understand the epidemiology of this disease a little bit, you start to do the right thing. If you basically ignore 50% of it, you won't do the right thing. If you try just to have political considerations, in the middle of that, it won't help anybody, and it won't help those who try to have these political considerations either.
What science do you think the Premier and the government were acting on when they made the measures that they announced?
I don't know. It's just a misunderstanding. I understand everybody's tired. Everybody is anxious. It's difficult. This doesn't preclude doing the right thing, and this needs to happen now.
So I'm wondering, in terms of consequences of this, I mean, this is just anecdotal, but it kind of ties in with what you said. I'm not sure what kind of science they were following. People who I know who have followed the rules to this point very clearly, because that's what the data has been indicating, this is what the evidence has been indicating, they've already, over this past weekend, just decided to just ignore it because they now no longer believe what is being told to them. And I'm wondering if you're concerned about this. Again, this is just personal, this is just anecdotal, but I'm wondering if you think that speaks to a larger consequence here.
Look, it pains me. What we need is clear communication. It's so simple. This is really not difficult to understand what needs to be done. And we need also to clearly communicate to everybody how this looks. It's so simple. Outside is safer than inside. But outside is only safe if you keep 2 meters distance or wear a mask if you can't avoid to go closer. And inside you should avoid everything which is just possible. We still have these open issues about, what is really essential work and what is not. If something is, a construction site, for condominiums in downtown Toronto, how could this possibly be essential right now? There are some luxury goods out there that are continuing to be produced. How is this possibly essential? We need to be strong now and do the right thing. And all the employers are, just required to do the right things. And of course, so are our elected politicians.
Dr. Jüni, one of the things that you said over the weekend in your cri de coeur, really, I thought it was, as you were really expressing yourself personally, was you're not sure if you're able to continue in your job. And I'm wondering, as you've reflected, whether you will, or whether you anticipate being allowed to?
Well, first of all, we're independent. They can't even fire me. I also have a luxury that this is the case. We're independent. This is a volunteer table. I'm seconded by the Dalai Lama School of Public Health. It's just that they, can stop working with us. We're here to help. We try to help, and we will continue to do so. That's the first thing. If it came to what I was, at the place I was Friday and Saturday, sometimes when things look dark, it's important to consider all options and be ready to let things go. Sometimes letting go is the right thing. thing. And I was seriously considering that as any other option. And, it's just, I just came to the conclusion just for myself. I've been here now for 5.5 years. This has been a home for my family and myself, and we felt welcome from the beginning. I owe this, to this place and to the people in this place, just to move on, and we just try to do as much as we can. Failure is simply not an option. We need to do this together. We can do this together, and everybody needs to help now and forget about themselves. We all need to do the right thing, and we can do that.
And further to your point just a moment ago, have you had any indication from the provincial government that they will no longer heed your advice, or they're no longer even going to be inviting your counsel on this?
No. And you see, I can see that they're also in a difficult situation. What I plead them now to do is to let go of any political consideration. You need to do the right thing. It's simple to do the right thing. Let us help you to do the right thing now.
Okay,
it's
and what is number one right thing that the Ford government can do to rectify the situation? I mean, we've got the borders closed now, the interprovincial. What is number one right thing that will have an immediate impact now?
Stop playing the melody of just restrictions and start to support and regulate properly. So this really means the first thing we need to do, if the provincial government wants to get this under control, they now need to support the essential workers, and they need to make sure that what is non-essential stops immediately. And if there are people who need to stay at home, that these people are paid properly. This will be much cheaper in the long term than what we're doing right now. We're really struggling right now. That's the first thing. Clear messaging, clear distinction between inside and outside, clear lists of what is actually essential, what is non-essential. I just saw, something else which actually just I find quite challenging just to realize. I hadn't seen that before. Just thanks to a colleague who pointed me towards that. We still have outdated guidance on the Ontario's website on mask wearing in a workspace. There's no way that there's anybody out there who should not wear a mask if this person is with another person in a workspace. There's still outdated information on there that if you're far away than 2 meters from each other, you don't have to wear a mask inside. That's wrong information. We need to get all of that right. We need to have work inspections that are actually really efficient, that get the responsibility to the employers. The employers need to keep their people safe. It's not the people who need to look after themselves there. It's the employer's obligation to keep people safe. This also means if you have situations like outbreaks, if these outbreaks are happening, then you need to do the right thing immediately. And right now in the situation we're in, this means you need to close down your facility. It's very simple. No excuses, no tokenisms. You do the right thing. We have had people dying, my colleagues tell me, on ICUs just because people did not do the right thing like that. It's really important now.
Yes. Dr. Jüni, I very much appreciate the candor and the counsel. So we will keep in touch and watch as Ontario tries to deal with what are very concerning numbers and cases and hospitalizations. Dr. Peter Jüni, the Scientific Director of Ontario's Science Advisory Table. Thank you, sir. We'll speak again.